Hello, and welcome to the first Watson weekend of 2024. I'm Rick
Oh,
Watson.
you're not Rick, although we are very, very excited to have you. As Nick said, this is our first show of 2024. We are so excited to have you. Rick is not here because he and his wife have welcomed a new baby, and we are so excited for them. So he is taking some time off. And since we really can't do this show without two creators, we have brought in our longtime friend and advocate of the show, behind the scenes guider of the show, Nick Kaplan, to come in and do this with me. So thank you for being on this journey. And
I'm so honored. Channeling my inner Rick Watson, but thank you, Jess. It's like I was the last the last one on the show, so I'm the first one back in the
that's
show,
right.
and I love the show, and I did it before the holidays, and I've been thinking about it ever since. So when I was asked to step in for Rick, I think my comments led to my appearance, have now led to my
That's right.
co-hosting. I feel like one of the people that, like Jay Leno when he was in for Johnny Carson way back in the day. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
And for Rick
You're a
too, I
former
mean,
child
amazing.
model.
So I'm super happy to be here. We have a great show today, and I think let's kind of start moving into it, right?
You guys that have joined us, you can join us, ask questions, feed in the chat. We are very conversational here. So yeah, take it away, Nick. What you got for
Yeah,
us?
I guess for me, I mean, I'll give you a quick kind of 411 on me. So as I think I mentioned in our last show, but I spent my career kind of went from the merchant side to the marketing, e-commerce, operating side to sort of the strategic side. And so I've recruited people to come in and support me in the show, by the
You have your
way.
own fan club here. Is that what
Exactly.
we do?
I do.
Alert.
I'd have to do proud for you and Rick. I've spent my career being intellectually curious, asking a lot of questions, learning, building communities, and commercializing them. And so to come onto the show and be able to talk about the trends that are happening as we see them, as they're being shown to us by the industry, somewhere in between what's the reality, and be able to talk to amazing people like our guests today is terrific. So I'm a nerd, a technology geek. I love to read. I love data, and I also love to touch and feel product and help people figure out problems. So I think I'm going to be able to bring that to the table for the next few weeks until Mr. Watson comes back. I will keep his chair warm, and most importantly, I'm really excited to be with you. I think you're
Oh,
incredible, and I think we have this interesting perspective that as we
yeah.
talk to guests and talk about some cool topics, it'll be awesome. So
I was so excited you said yes. So I thought the last show went so well, and getting to know you over these past couple of weeks, it's been really fun. So
you
yeah.
might not get me out of this chair, Rick.
Oh,
So I don't
you and Rick
know.
could do like a twofer. You can like sit in and you do a death dive.
Exactly. So what do we got? I mean, today, right? We have some really cool, interesting things happening. We're at this like super strange day in the industry in the sense like
Yes.
I know some really random things happened today. Like so I think our producer put first forward to us. So did you know that today was the release of Led Zeppelin's original album, aptly titled?
Yeah.
And something that's
Didn't.
really important to
So
me is women, and my great grandmother, as some people may know, was Lane Bryant, which gets that plus two, I think it's 290, gets me on the subway. But is really cool to have seen a woman in the early 20th century build a business before women could vote. But today is the day that women in 1915 were able to vote. But for us, it's really interesting because it's that like strange period between consumer electronics,
yep.
that other big behemoth that's waiting on the other side of the week.
Starts with an N.
It does, and it ends with an F. What is it?
NRF.
NRF.
So do we actually think
So
anybody's watching right now, or is it your little fan club?
some people are watching, but I think we'll get some watches on the back end. But yeah, I think it's really, I've always kind of wondered, A, why NRF was on MLK weekend. It's
Me
always an
too.
MLK,
Me
right?
too.
And
Yeah.
B, why it has to bookend consumer electronics.
Yeah, it's really tough because I remember being at the show, one of my early days in my retail career, being at the show. Your family's off, you can't go anywhere on the holiday weekend. And I'm like, why am I working on the holidays? But it's
Right.
why is that? I don't know.
I have a feeling that they must have done some deal with Javits like long ago. And it's just like,
Yeah,
okay, every MLK weekend we're going to have it. So
yeah,
but I think it's crazy. Like 130,000 people go to consumer electronics, and I think
yeah.
35,000 go to NRF. I got a text from someone last night, and I'm like, "Are you going to NRF?" He's like, "No, I was only allowed to go to consumer electronics or NRF, so I went to consumer electronics." And
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting to see the attendance in NRF this year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'm not going. So you guys are going to give me the lowdown, you and Benny, on what happened. We want to get to our guest, and I think we are so excited of what we're going to have in store. So I'll just kind of kick off with Adam. When I first got connected to Adam, it really was through like LinkedIn, and he has been such a powerhouse from a voice perspective and bringing in this energy around not only e-commerce and hiring, but just recruiting and advocating for the candidates themselves. So I have always been a big Adam Rose fan. I remember back in 2020 during the pandemic and people were losing jobs, like he was hustling every day trying to figure out how to help people and bring people together and really be this connection point, and not just even for his own business, but just in the spirit of just doing the right thing. And so he's just a great human, but also an expert in his field. And so we want to bring him on. Adam, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Jess. Appreciate it. That was a really nice intro. So I appreciate that. Nick, how you doing?
Adam, you're a good soul. So
Thank
we
you.
like
Thank
good
you.
souls.
I'm surprised you even remember that from 2020.
It was an intense time, but I just remember it vividly.
I built a spreadsheet when everybody was losing their jobs during COVID and just adding people's names to it and roles that they were looking for and shooting it out to everybody. And we got so many people hired off of that spreadsheet. It was like probably something I'll never forget, probably one of the greatest moments in my career.
So Adam, we have a little game, the two truths and a lie, and we're going to put Nick to the test in his first role as host. And so in our little test here, we've got a couple things. We've got 3 truths / lies that Adam has given us. So Nick, are you ready?
Like Rick never gets this wrong, by the way. So
good luck.
Yeah, you have a record to uphold, and we do. You guys know we keep tallies and counts here. So after college, Adam worked as a DJ before he got into recruiting. Okay,
a radio DJ.
Radio DJ. He went to high school with Anne Hathaway, and then he lives in Connecticut, but thinks the New York pizza is still superior.
I mean, I could totally see Adam gigging and being a DJ. The Anne Hathaway thing is like so random, and the pizza in Connecticut is better than New York, but as a Connecticut person, Adam may think that. So I'm going to say he was a DJ. I'm going to say that he went to high school with Anne Hathaway, and I'm going to say that number 3 is a lie.
All right. What you got for us, Adam?
So I was never a DJ. People love my voice, tell me I could, but
I think you actually
you
could.
see, right? Like, I mean, that's so brutal. I'm gonna have to reach out to Rick later and see what he thinks.
So it was my first job out of college. I've stuck with it. It's really all I know, unfortunately. But
wow. Well, when you're good at it and it works.
Yes, thank you. I did go to high school with Anne Hathaway.
You're good at it. Exactly.
She went by Annie back then. She was super nice. Our senior year, she was on a show on Fox called Get Real, so she was hardly ever there. I didn't take her to prom.
Okay.
No. I had a friend that might have dated her, and that's his claim to fame now. But I moved to Connecticut from Manhattan. People that were raised in Connecticut love to claim that New Haven pizza is the best. It's like burnt charcoal to me. I can't eat it. I just can't.
Oh my God, it's the best. And I'm a native New Yorker, and like Sally's and Pepe's, and there's that third one there too. They're the best. But
one more thing, I want to call back to Led Zeppelin. I saw somebody do an interview that really channeled Robert Plant. They were amazing that they could sing Led Zeppelin, and I had no idea. Do you know who that is?
No.
Lady Gaga. I saw her doing. Yeah, I saw the interview on Howard Stern, and she belted it out. It was amazing. I think she has like a secret Led Zeppelin cover band that she's in.
Wow,
that's
amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing. She's got a good voice.
Yeah. She does. So speaking of, you've got a great voice, and you've also brought us the word of the next week. So what you got for us, Adam?
Okay, my word of the week is branding. Now, every platform I get, I try to plead with people that they need to brand themselves from a job candidate perspective to land their next role. This is stuff like Gary Vaynerchuk's been saying for like 25 years. Love him or hate him, he's completely correct in this regard. You have to get yourself out there. You have to post on LinkedIn. My own team, I have struggles getting to post on LinkedIn. Like nobody is doing it enough. There are some folks out there, okay, they're doing an okay job, Rick Watson and some others. But still, I mean, if you want to land your next role without having to worry about, does my resume look great? Am I working with even the right recruiter, right? This is how you put yourself out there. People think about it from a sales perspective. People buy from those they know, they like, and they trust.
Yep.
And that's the same thing if you're a candidate. If you're out there applying for jobs, people will, if they know you, already know you, if they like you and trust you, you're going to have no problem landing that job that you want. And I think that we have a tremendous opportunity with LinkedIn being an excellent platform for this.
Yeah.
And still, people, I think, are just maybe they're too shy. They don't think people are going to like what others think about what they're saying. And that's something that you should not be worrying about. I can tell you from experience, the best posts on LinkedIn are the ones that are a little bit controversial, right? You give an opinion and maybe it's not a mainstream opinion and you get people to interact with that post and they can go viral and really it could change the trajectory of your career if you utilize LinkedIn correctly. And same thing for owners of e-commerce software as a service companies, digital agencies. They're literally leaving millions of dollars on the table if they're not posting. And don't use AI, don't use chat GPT, don't use ghostwriters. Like, make it come from the heart. And it's so easy to do. Like, just think of it during the day. This would actually be a really good post. Something that I'm thinking about right now on LinkedIn, and do it. And people need to see you, need to be visible, you need to get yourself out there.
This is something I'm super passionate about. As someone who didn't think about it until much later in life, right? I didn't really start building my brand until really, I could say honestly, a few years ago when I made an effort, which is ultimately how I met Rick. I like lobbied to get onto a panel at the lead conference, and that's where we met. But people at a earlier stage in their career don't think about attending a dinner. They don't think about getting out there, going to NRF just to walk through. And I always tell people this exact thing, which is build your brand, because it's a lengthy process. People, and you say it very well, think a LinkedIn post is like sharing someone else's post or just like posting an article. And I think that people really have to invest in having a point of view. They're so afraid to be wrong. It's always better done than perfect. And, don't let perfect be the impediment to progress.
You guys on the show are very big proponents of in-person conferences, dinners, etc. Not everybody can attend those, right? They don't have the ability to travel. Maybe they don't have the budget in their role to be able to do that. You don't need to. If you are branding yourself effectively on LinkedIn, that reach will get you more people looking at your profile, at what you do, at yourself, than attending those in-person meetings.
Yeah. So Adam, has anyone, I guess to close off on this topic, because I love it, and you're exactly right, the fear is what holds people back. Has anyone not been hired because of what they posted on LinkedIn?
People have not been hired because they don't post on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I think that is a soundbite.
So, particularly in sales positions, right? So we get roles from e-commerce software as a service companies or digital agencies, and they're sales executives, sales development folks, whatever it might be, and they're looking for individuals that have a significant presence on LinkedIn, because these companies know that if they do that, they're going to be hiring somebody that already has the right network and the ability to tap into that network.
Yeah.
So it is literally costing them those jobs if they are not posting on LinkedIn, if they don't have that presence on LinkedIn. And I know a lot of salespeople out there that are still not using LinkedIn effectively.
Yeah, it is the conundrum. So Adam, this is amazing. And it is a help me help you situation. So We got to jump into these topics, and it's actually a nice carryover because part of what you do is you help people prep for the future. You help companies prep for the future, and we have a couple of topics that we're going to layer in over the next course of 4 to 6 weeks. We want to just get into a rhythm where we're talking about what's going on in the industry, what's the general worldview. We're going to also talk about some specific companies. We know that there's the how I built this, of how did you build this company. There's lots of things happening on the companies that are going bankrupt and people are writing, but no one's really writing or talking about these pivots that are happening, or these companies that are emerging and reinventing their models. And that's where we want to focus over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to talk about Nike today. There's Stanley. There is Rent the Runway, and how are they going to reinvent? So we're going to talk a lot about what we're seeing happening in this space. And if you guys have ideas of companies you want us to dive into, throw them in the comments and we will add them to our list. And it'd be great, Adam, as we're talking through the Nike piece, just understanding from you what you see in this e-commerce ecosystem specifically, and where are companies pivoting and what are they looking for as they're doing those types of pivots. And then we're, of course, going to talk about the org of the future. And since Adam is here, we thought it'd be a great topic to have him weigh in on. When you think about the brands and the talent that they're looking for, Adam, what you're seeing and what you're seeing from candidates and how they need to think about the skills that they need to develop for the future. And then last is the happiness index did not go away. Although don't hate me, you guys might think it's doom and gloom index when we get through the topics later today. So I think we've got a packed show. We have already got 19 minutes in, but we are going to keep it rolling and hit off with what's the look forward for 2024.
Save it for the big reveal.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of kick it off if you guys don't mind, because I thought what was interesting in if we could pull up this slide, I think that we have this situation where 2022 people, were coming off of a bad year. They were predicting that it was going to be a rough 2023, and it wasn't a cakewalk. But if you looked at, would 2022 us say that the 2023 market would end more than 20%, I think people would have thought you're crazy if that was your forecast going in. As we ended 2023, where are we looking towards the future? And there's a couple of things that I think it's important for retailers in particular to think about. The election is happening is one. And that brings consumer anxiety. This was a chart or a survey from the Skim, and you can see 61%, and this is in women in particular, are saying anxiety is just one of the things that they're thinking about. And so as you're planning your budgets, as you're planning your strategies in 2024, and you're even doing your phasing of your sales, you have to take the election in account. Like, I don't know, Nick, if what you did.
I heard some crazy bit this morning on the news about, I think, the break in sort of people and parties is really amazing. And there's all these surveys happening now about, would someone vote for someone who was convicted or not? And, now we're going in what's happening in Colorado. So yes, I think it'll be a distraction. I never would have envisioned, as we sort of spend some time during this show, that we would end up here, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we talked about on the show that I was on was, this sort of divorce between what people are talking about and the reality of what we're seeing. And more so than any election in the past, this will be impactful, but it will depend a lot on what's unknown right now, which is how this runs through the courts. And even yesterday, and listening to a soundbite that Trump is talking about this being an assassination of him and his character. And so, it'll be really interesting to see what happens and how it does in fact impact us. But I'm going to go with conservatism and a negative impact on the foreseeable future. I'm going negative.
The thing that what we've seen in the past, if you look, so I looked at the 2016 election and I looked at the 2020 election, and like, what was the NRF commentary during that time? What was eMarketer saying? And Adobe said in the 2016 election, $800 million was lost in sales during that election distraction time period. But if you look back, it picked up. And so even in 2020,
799,999,000 were Adobe sales. That's what happened.
If you look at 2020, it was a soft November, and there was lots of chaos, but year over year, sales were up still 4%. So the consumer ends up coming back. There's just that phasing. And then you've got advertising, where if you're advertising, you have a risk of either your costs going up or your advertising getting pushed out because of just how much is going into not only media, but digital, and of course, social is always big. And so the forecast is that political ad revenue will go up 31% from where it had been, and it's at 15.9 billion. So that's a lot to think about. And then
that's fueling someone's retail media network.
Retail media is the hottest area that we are recruiting for right now, and it's been that way for the past 2 years.
Oh,
So
really?
there's so much opportunity there. And I'll give you just a small example. Like when we recruit for retail media positions, the crux of these roles, of course, are usually Amazon advertising, right? So as long as somebody has Amazon advertising experience, they could be considered for these roles that are a bit broader in scope. Now, it's so prevalent that we're hiring for roles that are just Target, for example, in terms of account management and retail media. It's gone so far away from just Amazon advertising. We're talking Walmart, Target, Instacart, Kroger, etc. There's so much money on the table there and creating a lot of jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, and it'll probably be a topic we tackle in the next couple of weeks, that we talked about was, what is sort of a business model of the future look like, that the straightforward transactional, someone comes in or goes on a website and buys something, versus other is sort of going away. And I think that as people look to diversify and monetize their customer databases in a way that doesn't breach privacy, and thinking about the monetization of their lists, et cetera, and data's prevalence, I think that retail media networks, which 2 years ago, it's all about metaverse and crypto, which I think are coming back right now, by the way. We
yeah,
can maybe talk about that too. But
so much
retail media,
Bitcoin news this week.
right? I mean, crazy.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, retail media networks are staying. I mean, I
yeah,
think it's indicative of probably org design and other things that you deal with a lot, Adam. And so, and I
yeah.
think it's probably that, that's a good segue, maybe just into Nike, right? Which is like,
Mhm.
to watch a business's evolution, right? And as a vertical brand, I don't know that retail media network is on their radar, but clearly, based on some of the news that happened with Nike this week, is in flux. And I don't know, Jess, as I'm the guest in the chair, I'll go back to you to drive us here. But
No, I think Nike is a great place that we can go to. I guess I have like, he has had this amazing pivot, and when we talked about the vision of the future, I think there's two things we could even bring into the Nike conversation. There's artificial intelligence, which is not going away. Globally, retail is supposed to be the second highest sector in terms of artificial intelligence investment, and think it'd be interesting to talk about how do we think Nike is going to bring that into their ecosystem. And then will Nike have any impact on the Ozempic effect? Because the Ozempic effect is real in terms of how many times it's coming up, at least in earnings calls. Prescriptions went up 111% just in the first quarter of last year. And so, yeah, I think that there is something going on there. As we get to Nike specifically, there's just a lot to say. And Nike is one of these retailers that has been around forever. They've made a movie about it. And what Nike has done is done some pretty tough pivots over the past couple of years. I think people were shocked when they pulled out of distribution from a wholesale perspective. And Nick, you and I were talking about that earlier this week, and how bold of a decision that was. They're taking more control. They want to gain more margin. And now, they're having to make more cuts and more decisions. So what do you think about Nike in the future of where it's going?
I love Nike. I love the brand. And I think its numbers in terms of, like, I think it is 59% market share across athletics. I was surprised for sure that they went out of wholesale, but I guess it kind of made sense, because to me, I'm like, Nike's an amazing company. It's pivoting into being more media, right? They had sort of bought sneakers, and they were doing these amazing drops, and not dissimilarly to StubHub and how it drove up prices to tickets, and the
Yeah.
leagues themselves wanting that money and raising prices. I thought Nike would do the same. But I think ultimately what we saw, and it'd be amazing, right? If there's questions from or comments from people watching, those that aren't in between CES and NRF, if you're on, but curious to hear people's opinions. I mean, I think that Nike realized like the foundation of this business is sort of trading, right? I mean, it's ultimately buying and selling and points of distribution like Dick's. I remember there was, and you may remember these guys, Downtown Locker Room, DTLR, right? They had 100 and some odd stores and huge business in Nike. And so like those are consumption. And so I'm kind of curious to hear what you think about the Tiger Woods thing. We talked a little bit about that and how
Yeah.
that sort of was like, wow, like Tiger and Nike, like that's one of the great all-time divorces, but maybe ultimately makes sense. But I guess to answer the question, I'm bullish on Nike, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. Pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it shows how hard D2C is.
It's expensive.
Nike, I mean, they have money, they have resources, and they still struggle with a pure D2C business. So, I see that on my end too, where companies try to build up their D2C business so that they have first party data and they have more ownership and they can improve their margins. But then similarly, they tend to fall back on marketplaces and retailer.com because it's just so difficult. And also from a talent standpoint, I don't think you can hire one person to run both. I think D2C is a separate skill set for marketplaces and retailer.com from the wholesale side of the business. And that presents challenges in itself.
When we think about Nike, you talked about Tiger Woods. They are making these decisions for as large as they are of where they've got to shed things and get focused and ensure that they're putting the dollars and the cents and the probably the talent, Adam, behind where they need to execute in order to keep the company viable. I mean, you've got also so much more competition coming in. You have Hoka, you have On Running, you've got all of these different places that are creeping into what are spaces that they have tried to own holistically. And now layer on the fact that they've been so prevalent in even like collegiate sports. They're being prevalent in professional sports, but lots of other companies are just coming in and maybe even writing bigger paychecks to get into some of those deals. And so I think there's a lot of pressure coming in at Nike when you're the behemoth, and you do have to figure out how you get focused. And so to me, the Tiger Woods deal just shows that not every company is an invincible and strikes 100 or bats 1,000. There's just a lot that they are trying to balance, and they have to get focused.
They should look at Tiger Woods' son. He's great. They should get on board with him.
Well, he's not. He's not going to be with Nike. Are you guys familiar with Overtime, OTE? I sat next to at the lead conference last summer. I sat next to one of the founders, I think, and CMO. And so for the holidays, and like we celebrate every holiday in the Kaplan household. So like Hanukkah, Christmas, and my kids are the beneficiaries of that. My daughter asked for an Overtime sweatshirt. You got to check it out. It's this amazing concept that's built on content, but they've developed a league in Atlanta. They're giving players opportunities to sort of go from high school into this league to go to the pros. And I forget their names, but they were like the 4th and 5th picks in the draft last year, came out of Overtime Entertainment. They do content crazy on TikTok. And like, to me, it's these types of things that you haven't even heard of that are capturing market share. And again, this is the problem with DTC. It's the fragmentation of it, right? It's like Walmart is Walmart and they'll be on the stage. But like as a small guy consulting and advising small businesses, like we didn't talk about this. NRF was considering Glossier and Casper as startups.
Yeah, they're not startups anymore.
Nike is, as are a lot of people that aren't in grocery or aren't in commoditized businesses or subscriptions or necessities, right? You don't have to have Nike, right?
Yeah.
You want to have Nike. And so when the brand image comes under fire, and a couple weeks ago, there was a drop, and it was so interesting, from McEnroe has this sneaker with Nike, and my daughter actually has the sneaker. And they were dropping it with Travis Scott, right? Travis Scott has the reverse swoosh.
Yeah.
And I love the Shade Room. Everybody in the world should follow the Shade Room for pop culture relevance. It's so important, I believe. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And all these people in the Shade Room were like, who's the old guy? Who's the old guy with Travis Scott? And like, that's a Nike thing, right? So like, I wanted those shoes and they did sell it quickly. But then again, then you go look at the resale value on GOAT or StockX.
Yep.
Like not much, like $200. Like whereas Dunks by Travis Scott are. So I think that's like a barometer. Is like,
Right.
what is Nike going to stay forever? And do they have to sort of dial down and focus? And is golf worth it? And the answer is
No.
probably not.
And it's probably not where they need to get the next generation, which is what they're thinking about too. It's a great conversation. We could probably talk for a while about Nike, but I think if the next place to go really is in what's Nike's organization. And Adam, it's a perfect way to bring in the other topic of what is the org of the future. And it may be different than what it needs to be at Nike versus what you're seeing. But I think you gave us some hope in that you're seeing the job market pick up. You've posted that on LinkedIn. But what's the talent people are looking for?
The job market is picking up from my perspective, my world, which is e-commerce, commerce, retail, omni-channel, e-commerce positions. Especially Q4 last year, very strong. Going into Q1, very strong. I'm a naturally cautious, pessimistic person. As a whole, 2023 was terrible, right? Tons of layoffs that was very hard to recover from. Now things are looking up. What does the org look like in the future? I think you have to think about the top, right? We're looking at C-level positions, folks that are actually coming from e-commerce. You're seeing CMOs that have e-commerce experience. I think that's critical. You didn't generally have that before. And I think that type of experience needs to be embedded within the organization from a top-down perspective. And then that will grow the appropriate teams. And then we're looking at how we're shaping these organizations in terms of, center of excellence for e-commerce. If it's a multi-brand organization working across all brands and having those resources deployed across all brands, we're looking at individuals that are brought in to say, okay, what's next, right? How can we move the needle? And that's a bit different than where we were previously. Especially during pandemic times, we were just trying to get through that and trying to deal with that volume. Where now we're looking for individuals that are more strategic in their thinking about how we can move the needle, D2C, marketplaces, retailer.com, all channels. And how do we unify those channels too? Because customers are desiring a unified commerce experience that they haven't had in the past. Across channels, marketing across channels, customer experience across channels, in-store technology that they can use on their phone, right, to compare prices and look at reviews. So there's a lot there in terms of investment in marketing, investment in technology that these C-level executives at the top need to consider, and then start hiring the folks that can move the needle in these areas.
Are there roles that were or skill sets, maybe is a better way to phrase it, that were being hired or looked for 2 years ago that you don't see coming up today?
That is a good question. Let me think about that. There are roles that we're working on less and less, which is pure D2C acquisition roles that paid search, paid social from a D2C perspective. Then we're looking at retail media folks right now. So there's more of a focus on marketplaces and other channels than there is strictly on D2C for us right now. So that 2 years ago, it was all D2C, it was all acquisition. I will say we are seeing a good pickup on the retention side for D2C.
Okay.
That's become a big focus. I think there's a lot of really interesting technologies out there in terms of retention now and memberships and things like that companies are toying with and seeing if they can make work for their business. But straight acquisition roles, we're seeing less and less. Brand side, digital agencies, of course, still hiring for acquisition roles. And that's my indicator of whether or not things are looking up right now. Are agencies hiring? Are technology companies hiring? Are we seeing more openings for recruiters and HR people out there? And yes, to all those, we are seeing each of those pick up in hiring right now when we did not see that in most of 2023. So that's kind of the barometer for me and what I'm seeing.
The most higher job I see is like head of people.
We're recruiting for a head of people job right now. We're getting tasked with recruiting for roles that we have not in the past that I would not say are very e-commerce related, like a head of people. We're even recruiting for a product development role right now, which I'm not talking about product management. I'm talking more on the industrial design side of things, because they want folks that have done this for e-commerce companies, and that's why they're coming to us. So I think more and more online retailers are getting that they need to have true e-commerce experience across the board for their organization in order to be successful. And I think to unify commerce across the organization, that's the best way to do it. I mean, look at even finance and accounting positions that have, are doing category finance within both retail, omnichannel, and also e-commerce. So I think that the overlap there, they're making it a priority that folks have some sort of digital e-commerce experience, or they've worked cross-functionally with these teams, and can speak to it.
Great. My one point I would add to that, and I so appreciate it, and I have so many questions too, but unfortunately we're not limitless on time in terms of like the difference between acquisition, retention, and people attention. But one of the things I think we're working on with clients is, whether it's like SMBs or mid-market, I think the behemoths, it's different, is having been a merchant, having grown up in that side, but transitioned over, there's this historically major divorce between like merchandising and marketing in any organization. Like, whomever owns the product, whether it's like televisions or toothbrushes or fashion, and whoever has to sell the product, they just seem to never be brought together unless it's at the CEO level or the president. You have to think at the end, at the beginning, which is, how are you going to sell this? Bringing everybody together to be impactful there, and then buying the product or whatever you're committing to at the end, so that everyone has a hand. And like, the days of the merchant prince are dead, and long live the marketing king. And that's not to say that the marketers are king. It's to say that everybody in the organization think through the lens of a marketer, and that the organization must come together and unify and be very deft, versus I think what we've seen historically is like, okay, you have this group and this group and this group represented by this person. And I feel like that's ending. And I don't know if you're seeing that, Adam. That's my feeling of like what success looks like tomorrow.
Yeah, just a few years ago, three plus years ago, we're working with companies that have retail focused teams and e-commerce focused teams, and they did not mesh well together. Right? There's a question of ownership, and retail teams have been within the organizations that are older and more mature. They've been with these organizations for so long. Then you have these new young e-commerce folks coming in and saying, "Hey, this isn't the way we're going to do things. This is the way we're going to do things from now on." And how do you bridge those two and mesh them? Most retail positions now have some sort of e-commerce responsibility, or they've just been working with e-commerce so cross-functionally for so long that they have built a relationship with them. So that's not something that really occurs anymore within these legacy organizations, where there's this split, there's this chasm between the two. I think you're finding that naturally it's become more unified. And the companies that embrace that, the companies that foster that, are the ones that are successful. The organizations that just have a centralized vision from top down, that understand what needs to be done from a unified commerce perspective, and then hires in a way that there are not silos within the organization. E-commerce, digital, it's so fast paced, and there cannot be any friction within the organization or things are going to get stuck. You need to move incredibly fast in bringing new technologies in, implementing those technologies, deploying those new technologies. Same thing with marketing. If you're not able to do that effectively, you're not going to be successful. The best organizations are the ones, no matter their size, they're frictionless, they can make decisions. Feel free to make mistakes, correct those mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving. Those are the types of people that they hire top down, and it's embedded within the culture of their organizations.
I think it's a great place to end this. Awesome. And I love your perspective. I think it'd be interesting, Adam, if we brought you in like mid-year. What's going on now? Did some of these predictions come true? Did it go to fruition? So,
and we didn't even really talk about the whole data and AI, right?
Yeah.
Because that is extremely helpful now for these organizations to determine what works, what doesn't work. How can they create all of these really good personalized shopping experiences for their customers?
Thought you're setting up our next show for us.
There you go.
We're going to be super fast because we know you guys have been hanging on with us through about 45 minutes. We're going to do the happiness index really quickly, just because the CPI data came out. this week. And I think that was just another marker of how did we end the year. And we have a little bit of a forecast of what's happening. So we do have this little sad snowman because it is not pretty, right, you guys? I mean, I am so happy that Adam is bringing the positivity. I give this news with a smile. But Vinny, if you don't mind firing up the slides, I mean, the reality was from the CPI index, it is better than 6.5%, which is where we ended December of 2022. We're certainly up, and we have a lot of pressure on where prices are. And we'll go to the next slide, because the services is really what's sticky. And it makes sense, right? When your stylist increases the cost of your haircut, not for Adam, but for me, that's not coming down, right? You've set that price and that's not going to change. In some cases with retailers, the food prices might come down, but some other price of goods, if the customer's used to paying this, what's the incentive to make that switch? And so there is really this stickiness in certain parts. If you look at the food, if you look at the food at home, the food away from home, which are your restaurants, they raised prices during the pandemic. Again, what's their incentive to bring it back down?
If I could bring this back to actually recruiting really quickly too, a very similar thing is happening. People that got hired over the pandemic when e-commerce was going crazy and people were hiring, like it was bonkers. Salaries got inflated so incredibly high. Yeah. Now these people are looking to make a move and salaries have come back down to normal. And what are they going to do? Leave their really high paying jobs
so interesting
to go back to the salaries that they were making a couple of years ago? It's an interesting thing in the market.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that perspective, because this is where people are feeling the squeeze, right? It is a lot of cheddar to buy cheddar. Cheese is $5 a pound. Eggs went up 8% in the month of December. Bacon is like $6, you guys. So it's and beef is just $11 per pound. And so it's probably a good time to be a vegetarian or a vegan, where rice is only like 99 cents and it's staying flat.
Tofu's cheap. I know some people don't like it. I love tofu.
We're going to have a lot of vegetarians taking Ozempic.
So the inflation optimism, this was the chart I was talking about earlier that had just given people the warm and fuzzies, because it was coming down. But what I liked about this is if you break it out by income bracket, you really see where that narrative and that perspective starts to flip. So if you're over 100K, you feel better. If you're under 50K, it feels a lot worse because you're feeling this pressure. And then if we go to the next slide, I think I can run through these super quick. Sorry, we can flip through this one. This is the lowest level of consumer confidence. We are in a confidence recession. We might not be in a recession yet, but we're in a confidence recession. It's 93%, since 1978. And if we go to the next one, this is, I got bills, they're multiplying. Your savings is going down because you have all of this pressure on now. Your mortgage is higher, your food is higher, your car loans are higher. And we have another data point on that, which is where more households are actually paying $1,000 than ever as their monthly car payment. Nick, I know you don't have to worry about that chilling in the city, but you got probably more expensive bacon. So, I
told you about my milk index. So
yeah, exactly, your milk index. So I think this is the monthly mortgage piece. It's certainly gone up significantly since 2013. It's $1,300 since even 2020.
Mortgage rates are insane. I don't know how people are buying their first homes. It's just,
and they're I don't think they are.
I mean,
but the rates are much better, to be honest. And so it really is the pressure.
Sorry, Jess, but you see more articles now in the last sort of 6 months about the case being made for renting versus buying, which was never really a topic, discussed in the news prior. And I think that's
and then you're not building wealth, and that creates problems down the road.
It does. If you're Barbara Corcoran, she's saying still buy, but like the reality is people can't afford it. Like what can they buy and what can they afford?
She should do a joint venture with the NRF about sales.
They'll be tag teaming. So I think that, the last thing is the delinquencies and at them being at the highest level. And this was put together towards the end of 2023, where we knew in, Q3, people had $1 trillion in debt. And they just put on top of that in Q4. And so we haven't seen the latest data, but we do not have buy now, pay later. It's not reported. It's not regulated. We do know it was up significantly, like double digits, high double digits in Q4. And so people have just taken on more and more debt and are anticipating they're going to pay it off for the next couple of months, maybe even a year. And so the last thing I'll say here is the Fed is not cutting rates. People, I think, thought that was going to happen in March. There's really no incentive to do it. Maybe they will before the election. I'd love to see if we've got a prediction there to just get everybody a good booster going into the polls. But I don't think it's happening for sure before the summer at best.
Definitely not. No.
So we're in for buckle up, people. It's going to be a rough couple of months. That's all I'm saying. We're the trio in blue. We're probably at a good place to wrap here.
Yeah.
You've been an
Adam,
amazing
thank
guest.
you.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Amazing.
And Nick, you were fantastic.
That's really why I signed on, was to be at the dance party.
So
my dance moves? No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you really don't.
Is it a little bit of it?
The music's so catchy. Who made this?
It's a chair.
Did Rick make this music?
No.
For you.
Me. Nice. Rick's band. I like it.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.